All right, it's time to talk about it. Let's talk about Yoshi P's shirt at the recent FanFest. Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today we're going to be going over some fan theories regarding the new jobs being added in Final Fantasy XIV's next expansion. Now, for those of you who weren't paying attention to all of the news and don't keep up with everything Final Fantasy XIV, the next expansion, patch 7.0 DAWNTRAIL, was revealed at the North American Fan Festival on July 28th. Now, among the many facets and features it is going to have, among them are two new jobs. Now, while we don't know what those two new jobs are, that is going to be saved for the EU FanFest in October and the JP FanFest in January, we were given what the roles of the new jobs are going to be. One of them is going to be a melee DPS, and the other is going to be a ranged magical DPS, a caster, if you so prefer. Now, there is another tried and true tradition when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV FanFest, and that's Yoshi P's shirt is usually a pretty obvious hint at something that is going to be coming. Now, across the various other fan festivals we've had some more obvious ones. Scarlet Witch meaning Red Mage, Batman meaning Dark Knight, 007 meaning Machinist. Okay, maybe some not so obvious ones. Speaking of not so obvious ones, the most notable one that threw everyone for a loop was Spider-Man, which actually teased Samurai. The reason being was that Sam Raimi, the director of the first three live-action Spider-Man movies, his name, when pronounced with like a Japanese accent, is Samuraimi. Now, people actually guessed that, and I laughed at them. And then Yoshi P confirmed that they were right. So let me just say that when it comes to this shirt, I'm willing to at least hear most of the theories regarding what people think it will be, but don't be surprised if I don't agree with you or I think it's outright ridiculous what some of the people are thinking this shirt actually means. But I'm going to present some of them to you. You can agree with them or disagree with them. We'll know for certain in October, most likely. So let's get started. Now, before going any further, it would probably help if I showed you and told you about the shirt in question. The shirt Yoshida was wearing was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt, specifically for, I think that's their latest movie. I think it's like in theaters now, Mutant Mayhem. I watched the trailer for it. Actually, it looks pretty good. Complete side tangent. But besides the point, we have all of this stuff to work with. We have all of the words and we have the themes of the turtles themselves, plus any sort of ambiguous details that we're going to be reaching for, specifically because of the samurai thing. So I've compiled a few theories, and there's actually a few that aren't on here that I'm sure I'll remember to bring up. Let's knock out some of the kind of simpler, kind of surface level ones. You take one look at the shirt, first thing that comes to mind, and it becomes a theory kind of situation. The first one I saw was turtles are green, thus Green Mage. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, we have Red Mage, Blue Mage, Black Mage, White Mage. What is Green Mage? Some of you may be wondering. Well, if you've played Final Fantasy Tactics or even Final Fantasy XII, green magic or green mages, which cast green magic, normally have things that are like debuffs. Yeah, it's usually a debuff style job. Sometimes they mix with certain other things. It's got like some overlap with some of the spells, but for the most part, that's what you're looking at. Now, I guess I've got three reasons why I don't buy into this. One, I think just the theory is just not very exciting. So, I want to believe something that's a little bit more out there. Two, the Green Mage, I don't know. Yeah, the other colors are just as ridiculous. But I don't know why Green Mage just sounds worse. I don't know how else to put it. But honestly, the number one thing is what the theme of a Green Mage is, being a debuffer. Have you played Final Fantasy XIV in the last few years? Because we have gotten further and further away from that as in anything as we possibly could. Some are losing all their dots. Heck, I'm expecting Bard to lose theirs. I mean, every job, and most jobs in the game have just been pruned of dots, because they're trying to reduce debuffs on targets. So the idea of having a job that is kind of dependent on debuffs, I'm less likely to buy into it. If you want to buy into the dot mage is finally coming back theory, then I guess this kind of suits your needs a little bit more. But for me, that's one that I'm not going to subscribe to. Oh, this one's another really simple one. It's Mutant Mayhem. So Mutant or Druid is going to be the job. Yeah, I know. I'm putting them in the video because I read them in my chat. And at the very least, I need to share this with you. I don't think I need to describe why I don't think that one. Druid is not very often a Final Fantasy thing. It is something I actually want to see in Final Fantasy at some point, some sort of Morpher, which is actually a Final Fantasy thing in very few games, but Morpher is an actual thing. But I would like to see some take on that at some point. I've even suggested that Beastmaster in some sort of future game could be a play on that, where they kind of pull in the essence and take on like this quasi like were form of different animals in order to attack instead of being a pet based job. Like I've floated those ideas, but the whole mutant or druid thing from that, I'm so far from buying that I'm on the moon. Speaking of Beastmaster, another really kind of too obvious one. Turtles are beasts. You know, they have Master Splinter, and you know, so Beastmaster. I mean, look, like I said, there's a ton of other animals in that, but like I said, this is another one that it's just like no part of me can buy into that. There's just nothing that I can do with that. So I would love Beastmaster again. I think a whip as a weapon for Beastmaster would be really cool, and it would be somewhat thematic and make sense. I know Final Fantasy XI players are thinking like a one-handed axe, maybe an axe and a shield, but all the same, they've mentioned Beast Tamer and Beastmaster before as being something that if they did it would probably be a limited job. I don't think that should be a limiting factor. I don't think they should, you know, say a job has to be limited when you could totally make it work. But either way, I'm not buying that for this guess. Not happening. Oh, this one's my least favorite one. You know, I thought the mutant part was actually my least favorite one. I think this one is the acronym for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, TMNT. TM means Time Mage. The NT, by the way, like, to be clear, I've seen ones that try to make use of the NT, like End Thief, which we all know is never happening if you've read any of the Rogue lore. But on top of that, you know, at least there's, you know, one of the most popular games for Turtles is Turtles in Time. But again, like, I would love a Time Mage. This is not a job idea that I think is silly or dumb. I've theorized what a Time Mage would even be like in Final Fantasy XIV, and maybe I revisit that for a video while we're doing all of these predictions and going over like what these jobs could be if they were to exist in Final Fantasy XIV. But that being said, this one is super copium to me. Like, I can't get there. It's too much, especially just the acronym part. If he wore a Turtles in Time shirt, I'd buy it. But because he's buying the most recent one with Mutant Mayhem, I'm like much further from believing that. And that's not the only one I saw. Like, someone tried to copium me into my personal #1 wish list of Puppet Master, which I've given up on for a long time now, in that one of the Turtles names, or I think the creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like shares a name with a famous Mammotheer or something. And I was like, stop. Like, listen, the samurai thing, at least when the samurai Spider-Man thing happened, Yoshida on stage went, I really liked the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. It was like, at least that was there. That's what led to the community even figuring out the samurai thing in the first place, as crazy as I thought it was. It was like such a direct hint that we didn't get that here. He just stayed completely quiet. But that, like, come on. So I would consider all of those the it's a stretch category. And I think even some of the ones I'm about to present you now, at least some of the reasoning behind them is a little bit in that same category. But at the very least, I'm going to go to what I think are the more plausible theories at this point. So the first one is that the ninja in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is actually just a tease that the job will use scouting gear. I think this is, if it's not deliberate, then it is the likely outcome regardless. Everyone is expecting this melee to be a scouting job. And people were predicting a scouting job a lot because they used a similar logic for Reaper. They said, oh, we might have 4 melees in the game, but we only have 1 job that uses maiming gear, and we'd like to have another job that uses it. So people were already predicting scouting because Ninja's now in that same position where, you know, they may be 5 melees in the game, but there's only 1 scouting. So they're trying to round that out instead of giving Fizz range another, which was my prediction, which is now my prediction for 8.0. So even if that's not deliberate, I think that's a likely outcome regardless. Now, the big one, and this is actually the theory I buy into because it's kind of along the lines of the samurai thing, but it requires a great deal of overanalysis. Honestly, if it wasn't supported by context of the trailer itself, I might not believe it. So the Spanish word for turtle is tortuga. Now, we are going to a Mesoamerican-inspired area, and so that's fairly fitting. But the Isle of Tortuga is actually a pirate island, which is teasing some sort of pirate-themed job. Now, for me, this is the theory I buy most, because the ninja thing with the scouting gear is great, but there are so many little tiny context clues that if somebody was hired to come up with the shirt Yoshida should wear, they did a lot of research to get to it, because there are so many little things that get you to this point. So first of all, what would be the name of this job? I think Corsair, Final Fantasy XI has Corsair. It is literally a pirate-themed job that uses a one-handed sword and their signature weapon, the hexagon. They are able to shoot magical bullets at the opponent, which kind of makes sense. Ninja is really a magic melee when you break down what their burst window looks like with ninjutsu. They cast so much magic and do so much magic via ninjutsu that having a gun loaded with ethereal bullets doing magic damage kind of lines up, and they all had different elements and different effects. They may tone that back if they do go this route. But it's also been a long theorized and even requested job for Final Fantasy XIV. Originally, Musketeer was going to be a class in Limsa Lominsa. You can even still go to where the Musketeers Guild would have been, and there is a class symbol for it while you're there. So, people thought it was going to go Musketeer class, Corsair job. It's just been a long theory and guess. Of course, we're not saying Corsair is for certain. Other people have gone like, Buccaneer, outright pirate, swashbuckler. But I think Corsair sounds the most kind of neutral, I suppose. Like pirate is kind of like thief, where it sounds to it's like a lot of big negative connotation with it, even though we know, having worked with Limsa Lominsa, that that's not really the case. Same with Buccaneer and Swashbuckler because of Limsa, but you get what I mean. A lot of the other synonyms are not as, I guess, neutral as Corsair is. And again, Corsair is right from Final Fantasy XI, so, that's always fair. Some people think that it can't be Corsair because it's in 11, and Yoshida said that they are eventually going to have to make original jobs for 14. They didn't say these jobs are going to be completely original. They said that, it's inevitable, essentially, that they're going to have to do that. We have seen them do plenty of original jobs already. So, plenty of room for things. I'm just not going to shut them all down. I'm telling you, my vote is in the Corsair book. But it's not just because of the context here, the Tortuga theory, but there's other things that are supported. In the trailer, you can sort of see what looks to be empty holsters and the Warrior of Light looking like his hand is in the shape of a gun, but like the weapon has been removed from the trailer in some spots. And I do think that's probably a bit of overanalysis. I think a lot of the Corsair theory involves overanalysis. But I would like to see a sword pistol combo class. I think that would be a really cool aesthetic. I think it's very fitting for the very pirate kind of open seas theme that they're going for with the new world in the trailer. I've even seen people say sword and a whip. Go like indie style, like a like a cutlass, or the short sword, and then, or maybe even the short sword and a cutlass, or maybe another sort of like parrying sword or something. I've seen people throw out a bunch of theories, so the weapon I'm not that concerned about, but the theme of the overall job is what I think they're going to land on for that. And then another detail, honestly, a very common theme is ninjas versus pirates. Like, that's something that is used in a lot of different media and has been for many years now. And it would honestly make the scouting role pretty cool, because then the whole scouting role kind of meets that. So again, a lot of little details. I do think some of these are a reach. I totally don't blame someone for not buying into that theory, but it is where I'm going to place my bets. So come October, I'll either look really smart or I'll look really dumb. Now, I will acknowledge one point against Corsair that's certain to come up in the comment section amongst Final Fantasy XI players, and it has nothing to do with the trailer or the t-shirt, but everything to do with what the job is actually a derivative of. It's based on Gambler from Final Fantasy VI and that of Setzer, and so they actually gamble on buffs for their allies and can provide debuffs and buffs with their gun and the various magics that it fires. Now, while I wouldn't be surprised if magic bullets showed up, I mean, Machinist has them, so why not? It would have to be a completely different system that works for this, but that's besides the point. The whole gambling aspect, I would imagine, would just be thrown on the cutting room floor. Maybe they'd reference something with it, kind of go with like a parlay or more other pirate, gambling games, which is, not too unreasonable. But as a gameplay element, I think they would just abandon it anyway. I'm not even convinced Astro is still going to have their cards by the time the expansion comes out, so I don't even want to imagine them doing it to another job. That's not the last theory, though. And honestly, this next one was the first one that kind of popped into my head when I started trying to overanalyze it, because I was like, turtles, no, wait, we got to look deeper. And so I started thinking, oh, you said Sam Raimi's name, so what about the names of the turtles? Yeah, the other theory is that the names of the turtles are the hint. They are all named after Italian Renaissance artists, so artist or painter comes to mind. That sounds stupid, but there's actually a decent amount of support for that. A, we had Lost Ark recently who has the artist, class. Not to say they're looking at Lost Ark and being like, let's do that, but at the very least, there is a game with an artist as a caster. I'm sure there's more than that as well. But more importantly, if you've played Final Fantasy VI, then you know of our favorite Pictomancer, Realm. She's a fan favorite amongst people who love Final Fantasy VI and even the retro Final Fantasy games. She sketches enemies to use their moves against them. So something like a small ethereal canvas to cast magic on, to me, isn't the weirdest thing I've heard. It's very similar to how Machinist in Shadowbringers was made to resemble Edgar from Final Fantasy VI. And I actually do think that they're starting to kind of dig into that a little bit more. I mean, Gunbreaker is just Squall and Cypher combined from 8. And then again, Machinist being Edgar. I like when they do this, when they reach into specific characters and their most identifying factors and at least flesh them out a little bit, But that being said, I don't want to shoot this one down, but unless the turtles are a double entendre, I just think they're going to show the melee first because I think that's what the Warrior of Light is in the trailer, and I think that it's very similar to when they showed Thancred in the Shadowbringers trailer as Gunbreaker, but didn't reveal Gunbreaker. Here, I think they're keeping it a little bit more ambiguous, but they're trying to, I think that is, the two things are one and the same. So the shirt, I think, is for the melee class and not for the caster. That being said, I'm not going to write this up. I think it's actually a perfectly plausible theory in most cases. It's just not the way I'm going to go. And, I won't be surprised if people do. If you subscribe to this one, go right ahead. I can't tell you you're wrong. Because of the Spider-Man thing and because of how ambiguous this shirt is, this is one of the most discussion-driven job speculations that we could possibly have. So there are some things I think are very silly, but that's not one of them. Now, I'm sure I've seen others, but I think I've given you more than I probably should have in this video, so I think we're going to wrap this up there. Let me know what your theory is, what theory you subscribe to, if it's somebody else's, whatever, in the comments section of the video below. I'll be sure to give you all the coverage that you need, and we'll continue to discuss this and various things like State of the Realm and probably some follow-up videos, because I'd actually like to talk a little bit about what some of these jobs are in the other bits of the franchise, what they are in other media, etc., because I think a lot of people would want to know that maybe before deciding if it's something they even want. But anyway, that's a wrap for this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.